water supplied by a public municipality or a private well for residential or commercial use, Purified Water Services LLC has the solutions to provide you with simply clean water. We offer a complete line of professional water filtration equipment and accessories. Soft water makes a difference you can see and feel. Water heater and appliances last longer with less maintenance. Iron and H2S filters eliminate iron stains and offensive rotten egg odors and protects your water softener equipment from iron fouling. No matter what your problem is, Purified Water Services LLC has a solution. Contact Kenny Williams at 352-446-2709. All right, welcome back to another edition of the Goblay Show. I'm your host, Billy Goble, and today we got a special guest. He is a former basketball coach at South Sumter High, and he's also a former coach at Wildwood High, Wildwood Middle High as well. So today's guest, without further ado, please welcome Mr. Vaughn Moreland. Vaughn, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Billy. It's good to be here, man.
I was going to say that normally, and that's not the first time I've heard that, there's been several games where you're like it even happened to us, in Pop Warner. You get in a game and it's not even the championship game, and it's like this game was a whole lot funner.
Right.
And then the next game is the next round. You're like, man, that wasn't as fun as the one before that, but it was just the way the chess match. It's the way it went.
Well, I mean, in that semifinal matchup, it was, we were ranked number 1 in the state, and Madison County was ranked number 2. We just happened to have to play each other right away. And they were a really good team. I'd seen them play several times that year, and I knew they had, they were like us. They had some really great athletes. So it was, it was a fun game to watch. When we had a lot of exciting games. We played a team. Those guys, the year before, we played a team, Bell High School. Bell's, out in the country. I don't know if you've ever been up to Bell. You're headed up to Dixie County and that way, but Bell's just out in the middle of nowhere, really. Bunch of farm boys, I guess, but they could shoot the ball.
Huh.
And we played them the year before at our place, and it was a nail biter. Came right down to the end. I think both teams scored in the 80s, and we ended up, beating them. But we had to beat them again the next year, and I really worried that that was going to be a game that might stop us from getting back to the state. But we went up and played them at their place, and pretty much kind of shut them down.
Yeah. Is it like when you get to that final game, I mean, was it the second time? It's obviously a little bit easier when you make it there as far as preparation and mental preparation, because the first time they always say this when you're in football, you're like, these kids, that team, they've never been to the playoffs, they've never been to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They don't even know how it's going to be. And if you get somebody that's been in there 3 or 4 times or whatever,
yep.
I mean, they've been there. They've been to the big scene. It does, that it's crazy how. Did it ever affect you guys at any?
I think that's true. The year before, and I felt like as a coach, the year before, I made mistakes. We went down there and played and won in overtime the year before in the semifinals, and we came back to Wildwood. Instead of staying down there, we came back, and the next day, even the day of the state championship, I had 4 or 5 of those juniors taking a pre-SAT test for 4 or 5 hours before we drove to Lakeland to play in the state championship, and I should have said, no way. I know this is important, but so is the state championship. But I let all those guys take that test, and that night we played Gadsden County, and we looked like we were zombies. They'd set in a testing situation for 5 hours.
Yeah.
We were late getting on the bus to leave. So I blame myself for that. The next year, I told Coach Hampton, Mr. Hampton, I said, if we go down there and win, the semifinals, we're staying. You know, I've got a hotel picked out. We're staying. We're not We're not coming back. Right. You know, there's something for sleeping in your own bed. I know, but there's also something for, you know, these guys getting to, you know, stay the night in a hotel and, you know, get up the next day, and that's what we did.
Well, I think it's important, like you said, to do that because you keep your guys together. The last thing you want to do is let them go home, and you know, these are teenage kids. You're not going to make them go to bed early. So you run into that problem consistently of, hey, did you go to bed at a decent time? Did you eat anything? You know what I mean? It's like, no, I'm good. I don't want any food. Well, you still need to eat, even though you haven't. You know, you don't feel like it. You need to eat something,
right?
Because you get out there and you start running around, whatever. But it's funny how, you know, it's a straight up gamble. You know what I mean? Like I've seen it from time after time. Like different teams will have to go to a game and they won't go early. They'll travel later. Some people just get there and get off the bus.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's like, oh my gosh, dude. What?
Yeah.
I mean, you could. Now, it may not make any difference, but it seems like it would.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So.
Well, and I think that's all what you said. It's stuff you learn, and even as a coach, you know, you learn. Hey, this is the way we need to do it, right, because that didn't work. I'll tell you another story, and this is a crazy story. One of my better teams at Wildwood, back before we got into the rural 1A classification, which to me was a big deal because you know, we were playing teams like Orlando Jones, PK Young, Lake Highland Prep, and we had some good teams, but we would run up against one of those schools and we just couldn't match up.
Right.
And I had a really good group of guys a couple years, 2008, 2009. Demetrius McCrae was one of them.
Okay.
Derek Williams, Pop Everett, Pop Mitchell, DeAndre Mitchell. Good group of guys at Wildwood, and we made it to the regionals, and we were getting ready to play Orlando Jones, and we were playing at home, and I let the guys leave school and was telling them, you know, be back at games at 7:30, be back here at 6 or whatever, you know, go on home. Well, Demetrius McCrae, who was one of our best players, leading scorer, he and his girlfriend were fighting, and on the way walking home, she was in a car and she saw him and decided, you know, she might just take a run at Demetrius, and flipped him over the car. And
oh no!
He was out. He was out for the next 2 games, and we played Orlando Jones, and I still remember. I really honestly didn't know if we could beat them because they had beat us pretty good in a Christmas tournament. And I can remember going in the locker room, and before I even opened my mouth to say, hey, you know, Demetrius he's gone. He's not going to play. He's in the hospital getting checked out. DeAndre Mitchell and Torrey Harrison, those guys stepped up and said, Coach, we got this. We got this. And I still remember we went out and guys played like I never seen them play before. DeAndre Mitchell scored like 35 points. He was hitting shots from everywhere. And DeAndre would probably tell you he wasn't the best shooter in the world, but he was hitting them from everywhere. And one of the things I remember, and I had this on video, early in the game, DeAndre comes down with the ball. He's got the ball about half court, and DeAndre wasn't our best ball handler either, and so it's kind of, the ball's going all over the place, but he's dribbling it, and he's headed toward the basket, and he gets to about the foul line, maybe takes one more dribble, and he goes up against these 2 or 3 Orlando Jones guys and just dunks it with both hands. And the crowd goes crazy, and I said to myself, we might win this game, you know, we got a chance. But it just turned the game around.
Yeah.
And we won, and then we played PK Young in the regional finals. and we didn't play with Demetrius, and they beat us by like 10. But that was a good team, that group.
Yeah. For almost 30 years, 75 Chrome Shop has been a family-run business with a dedicated team of longtime employees. We stay ahead of the curve in the ever-changing trucking industry, providing top-notch customer service and product knowledge. Whether you're looking for the latest chrome accessories or hard-to-find parts, we've got you covered. We offer aftermarket chrome for all big rigs, custom vinyl lettering, acrylic signs, and tags. Our 10,000 square foot facility, the oldest chrome shop in the South, houses a mechanic shop for oil and tire changes and chrome installation. Plus, we have a huge selection of lights for every vehicle on the road. Don't miss our annual truck show every April, featuring over 200 trucks and family-friendly entertainment. Visit 75 Chrome Shop today, your truck's new best friend. And that's kind of what I was talking about, like the gamble you take is when you hit that story right on the head with, man, it's just so many elements can happen where, I mean, you're talking about, you know, they leave school early and they got to be back at 7, and it's like, you know, it's given 4 hours, you know, 4 hours, and you're expecting 17-year-old kids to be back on time, first of all, on time, and then do the right thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying I'm not pointing anybody out, but it's a gamble you take because it doesn't matter what sport it is. It's hard. Right. You can't corral that many kids in there, you know?
Well, we never did that again, I can tell you. They never got to, you know, before a big game like that, they never got to leave and come back. We took care of them at the school and fed them and, you know, that kind of thing.
I think there's a lot to be said about when you say you live and learn a lot of things. You know, when you go to the tournament or whatever, and then, like, you know, even just in preparation, like, what works, what doesn't work, can we do this? We did this last time, it worked. We didn't like this, that, you know, like, it didn't work for us this time.
Right.
So, I mean, it's cool that you were able to do that. I mean, not everybody gets that same opportunity, but I think it's cool that you were, you know, some people don't pay attention to that as much, is what I'm saying.
Well, you know, and Billy, I coached for a bunch of years, and as I got older, I felt like I started doing things better. You know, one of the things I started doing better was scouting. Mm-hmm. You know, my wife, she'd tell you that the year we won the state championship, we probably went to 20 other games and scouted teams. You know, just because I wanted to see them. And one of them was this Bell team that I really worried that I didn't know if we could beat them at their place. I bet you we saw them play 6 or 7 times, and every time we saw them, I'd think, I don't know if we can beat them. And the reason was because they had some really good shooters, but they ran a great man-to-man offense. And I would watch teams play them man-to-man, and I'd think, you can't stop them.
Yeah,
you can't stop them. And it was kind of funny because I happened to finally see them play against a team that played a zone. And all of a sudden, they looked like a different team. They didn't move. They didn't, you know, their zone offense didn't look anything like their man-to-man offense. And I thought to myself, well, why don't we just play them zone? You know, let's see how they handle a zone. So when we went to Bell that year, we played a 1-3-1 zone and just completely shut them down. And it's like, you know, it took me 6 or 7 games to watch them to realize that maybe we don't need to play them man-to-man. You know, let's try something else.
Yeah.
But I did a lot more scouting, and that's why back when I had Clinton and Rich and those guys, I kind of blame myself that I hadn't seen Lakewood play more.
Right.
Or went and watched North Marion or Pasco more, because I could have been a lot more prepared as a coach, and I felt like later on I did that kind of stuff, you know, more, which is what you got to do.
Right. When you scouted, did like when you said you went to Bell quite a few times, did they ever catch on, like, what's this guy from Wildwood doing?
Oh yeah.
And
I kind of liked the fact that they knew, you know, that I was there.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, in a way that to me, if I saw a coach coming continuously to watch us play, that means we're doing something
right. And
because he hasn't figured it out quite yet.
And you know that he's worried about you. I used to like seeing coaches come to scout us because I knew that we were on their radar anyhow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big part of it. And something else I did for a long time. I had my managers filming games. But then they'd miss a quarter.
Yeah,
they'd go out. They'd go out at halftime, and come back the start of the fourth quarter. And I'm like, what happened to the third quarter? Well, there's a long line at the concession. Then I got to where I'm taking 2 cameras. I got 2 managers, in case one of them falls asleep or one of them, I got 2 cameras, and I was having to, put the 2 game films together. And I was doing all the stats. I got to where I didn't even have stat girls because stat girls, they don't know what an assist is. In basketball, it's like you ask them, okay, what's an assist? They don't know. Offensive rebound, defensive. You had to really find a special person. Yeah. And most time we were looking for a young girl that wanted to do it, that knew all that stuff.
Right.
So I got to where I just, we had managers. But I did all my stats from game film, which is why it was so important that they get it, and they didn't hang out at the concession and miss half the game.
Right.
And then, after that, my wife Kay started. She was she would do the videotaping at the games.
Oh yeah.
And she was really, she was great.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about her missing something. She was right on it. But then, we'd put that on. They came out with Huddle.
Yeah.
Huddle was great.
Oh yeah.
But I do all my stats off of Huddle and I'll tell you, I learned so much doing the stats.
Yeah.
Because I'd watch stuff over and over again, and on Huddle you just back it up, slow it down, play it again, and I would see stuff that I would have never seen had I not been doing the stats myself.
Yeah, Huddle's a great tool. I wish that would have been around when I was in school because, not that I played sports. I'm just saying, like, for our athletes, guys we grew up with, because, they could make – that's how the kids make their highlight tapes.
Right.
And that was my job, to make a highlight film.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to make a highlight film.
Yeah.
And, and nothing against the player, but I'd have people that they might this is especially for football, but I did film some basketball games. You'd have the person come up and ask, and I'm like, well, what games did you play in? And they'd be like, well, I played the when we were up 45-0 or 42-0, and I played the second half of the Wiki Watchy game. And you're like, okay, all right, so we're probably okay. I'll see what I can do. But I got to where Coach Sherman would tell me one time, just ask him when you think, what do you think is your best game, and just put that's your game film. Think I had my best game against, just say, Wildwood. My best game was against Wildwood. Well, then use that tape for your highlight tape.
Right.
Don't show other things. If it's so like patchy,
right?
Don't use it as because that's not going to help you out as much as you have a consistency of plays where from one game. But Huddle's a great tool.
Yeah.
I love it.
It was hard. Doing highlights when you had to use videotape.
Oh yeah.
But when Huddle came along, that made it easy.
Oh yeah.
And as far as coaching, it was the coolest thing too, because we'd watch game film, and I'd be sitting there on the computer, and I could draw on the computer,
right?
And I could make arrows, and I could do all kinds of stuff that you couldn't do before. Show a guy that look, you're not getting off your man when he passes the ball.
Right.
You're staying with your man, and you need to jump to the ball. We had all kinds of things that we would look for. But Huddle was great, and it kind of changed things.
Do you remember Coach Wright, Bruce Wright?
Yep.
Okay, so he was. I love him. He's so cool. But he was coaching basketball at the high school at South Center High. It's been a few years, and they were at practice, and he was talking about some kind of defense, and I said, 1-3-1, coach, and he goes, we're trying, coach. I'm trying. But when he said 1-3-1 earlier, I thought of Bruce saying, I'm trying, coach. I'm trying.
I can see Coach Wright doing that and saying that. Yeah.
He was so over it. Whatever they were doing was not working, and he was like, and I don't know if it was JV or varsity, but he's like, I'm trying, man. I'm trying. It's just, he's not trying to make it complex. It's just either you learn it or you don't. Catfish Johnny's Restaurant, serving the Lake Pennsauken and surrounding areas since 1990. For the last 33 years, we have strived to serve great food at great prices and a friendly, casual atmosphere. If seafood isn't your thing, our burgers or wings are the best around. We have daily specials too. Check us out on Facebook or Instagram for more information.
Well, Billy, basketball was my thing. When I moved from up north, I coached at a little school up north that didn't even have football. So basketball was king. And of course, Indiana, Midwest, Southern Ohio. Yep. I mean, basketball was big. So when I moved down here, it was kind of hard for me to get used to the fact that basketball was kind of like third fiddle, and you didn't have crowds for games. Like you had up there in the wintertime. I mean, in the wintertime up north, there's no place better to be than in the gym. Yeah. But down here in the wintertime, there's no place better to be than at the park or, someplace else besides a basketball game. Right. I mean, we had big crowds for Wildwood, South Sumter, or, sometimes for playoff games. But, I kind of missed that. I missed that atmosphere. Yeah. Coach Hampton did a good job with his girls' teams. Of course, he was the principal too, so when he invited everybody to the games, he had a little more clout than I did, with the staff as far as, hey, we've got a game tonight, come out and support the team. When he asked everybody to come, people would come. Yeah. He had bigger crowds than we did a lot of times, and we were playing district championships and things right along with each other. In fact, in 2018, I think we were the first high school team to win both boys and girls state championships.
I think I did hear that
at that time. Yeah. And after that, I think Hawthorne did it. Yeah. Somebody else might have done it, but we were we weren't in competition, but Hamp did a good job with his getting the crowd. Yeah. To come out, and I kind of envied that sometimes, because sometimes we'd be playing a big game and wouldn't be much of a crowd.
Well, you're not going to tell Hamp no. He's scary.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
That's what I'm saying. Well, if you're one of his teachers and he sees you on the sidewalk and says, "Hey, you coming to the game tonight?" No, I'm not coming.
So Hamp reminds me of. By the way, Hamp, if you watch this, miss you, buddy.
You need to get Hamp on here.
I'm trying, but he lives in Fort Pierce. I can't. I mean, I'll have to go see him. I'll go to the beach and we'll hang out. He
would be good to get on here. He'd have some stories.
Oh yeah, that's what I need. Yeah. But I'm talking about Hamp. Hamp reminds me of another coach. He used to be he was coach for 10U. His son played with us at 10U this year and in the last couple of years. And he was our athletic trainer, Chris Epperson. You know Chris.
I know Chris.
So Chris is from EKU, or near EKU, which is I guess the Lexington is near, kind of in that area. Whatever.
About 30 miles.
Right. So he tells a story. It's my favorite story, and I got to tell. So this reminds me of Hamp. So he had a coach. That was very, very, like, he had that like, he was just like, he didn't mess around, you know what I'm saying? And he was an O-line coach. I think it's Danny Hope or Hope, whatever, I can't remember his last name. Coach Hope. And they were playing Eastern Illinois. Chris says his senior year. They're playing Eastern Illinois. Tony Romo's playing against them. And their quarterback throws a pick six. First play of the game, pick six. Well, the head coach was formerly a O-line coach, so he was like, you know, like he kind of like, you know, took care of his O-line, but he was more or less worried about, like, unless they got hurt or something, and so he was kind of like real dismissive, you know. So during the play, pick six, their best left tackle, his name was Jose, he gets, you know, banged up. They beat the crap out of you on the pick six. It was your free game. And so they're bringing the ball back. Jose comes off the field, and he's trying to tell Chris that he got the wind knocked out of him, but he can't breathe, you know, because you're. So he's like this, and so Chris is like trying to take you. Okay, let me sit down. So they're sitting down, and Chris is kneeling in front of him. You know, he's like, you know, he's like, hey man, you tell me what's wrong. You know, finally he finds out the wind got knocked out. So about that time, Chris is like right here, and he's talking to Jose. And he says, the head coach gets right in Chris's face. He's like right here, and he goes, what the heck happened to Jose? Like, he's got this. I can see, like I said, I can see Hamp doing this. Like, yeah. What the heck happened to Jose?
Yeah.
And Chris is like this, and he's like right here, and he's like, he turns around, and he goes, he got the wind knocked out of him. And without missing a beat, he says, "We'll put it back in him."
Put it back in.
Put it back in him.
Put it back in him.
He goes, put it back in him.
There you go.
So he's like, okay. So the same coach, their equipment manager, they're doing the team photo.
Yeah.
And the equipment manager is sick, or he's not going to make it. Okay. Right. This is the team photo day. It's a big deal.
Right.
So he's kind of like, as far as like, I've never met him obviously, but as far as I can tell, he's kind of like Keith Alman. He's like, he'll just take action. You know, just, all right, kids. He starts throwing stuff around. Well, he's handing out pants and shoes and stuff. And this kid walks through the line, and he's not even looking at sizes. He's just putting the stuff on the table as they walk through, like it's boot camp, you know. Right. And he puts his shoes up on the table, and the kid's like, he wears like a 12. He looks at it, he goes, Coach, these are a 9, and he just hands him the shoes, like, take them or I'll kill you. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it was like that. Not saying Hamp would do that. I'm just saying Hamp reminds me. He just got this. Yeah, he reminds me of my dad. Yeah. That's what I can say. But yeah. they're two peas in the pod. But yeah. But that's some of the two funniest stories of that guy. He was so like, put it back in him.
Put it back in him. That's good.
And Chris is like, okay, we're trying. He's got, because they got to go right back out there. You know. But that's funny. Yeah, I'm trying to get Hamp on. We'll see.
He'd be good.
Yeah.
I remember, I think Hamp picked this up at a coach's clinic, but he told me one time, he said, and I don't know if I ever used this on a referee or not, but one of the things that a referee makes a bad call, and you don't want to get on them too hard. You just ask him, hey ref, I just want to know if you can tee me up for what I'm thinking. And when the ref says, no, I can't do that, then you say, well, good, because I think you stink. And then when he tees you up, then you go, and now you're lying. Now you're lying.
Now you're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
That was a pretty good one. I think that was some college coach that shared that at a clinic. But, I could see Hamp saying that, too.
Did you do a lot of clinics while you were there? Or while you were coaching?
Did I go to a lot of clinics?
Yeah.
Yep.
How was that?
I like going to clinics.
Yeah.
I felt like when I went to a clinic, I didn't take page after page of notes.
Yeah.
But I felt like I always came back with some good stuff.
Yeah.
And if you could go to a clinic and come back with 2 or 3 things that were going to help you, then it was worth going to.
Well, yeah. If you can take something back and use it, I mean, that's why I love talking to people, different scenarios, because it's more of the advice than anything. You can and it may not work.
Right.
What you have going on, it may not work for what you have, but at least you have an alternative. You know?
I love going to clinics, and to be honest with you, Billy, I know Coach Sherman probably got to do some of these, but I always wanted to be a clinician, be able to do a clinic.
Right.
Because I thought that'd be fun. I would like to have stepped up there to a, chalkboard or had a team out on the floor and been able to, run through some drills. Because, I felt like we did good stuff.
Yeah.
And I felt like it helped us get to where, we eventually got.
Well, we've talked about basketball, but I know you're a big baseball fan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously you're wearing a Reds hat, which is, sorry.
I know. I see that. All that Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah. The red legs. Well, speaking of that, do you ever go back to Cincinnati every once in a while? You go. I've seen you at a couple games, but is that something that you've?
Almost every summer we try to make a game. Haven't made it to opening day yet. Which
that'd be great.
Opening day in Cincinnati's it's a big deal.
Yes.
I mean, they call off school and have a big parade. My wife Kay and I were up there one year for opening day, and we went to the parade. It was like 15 degrees, and we hadn't bought our ticket yet. And, tickets were still going for, $150 a piece or whatever. And I said, I don't think I can go sit, because it's freezing.
Yeah.
So we didn't go. So I still got that to, mark off my bucket list. But, yeah, I grew up in the mid-'70s when, you had to be a Reds fan. You had to know what the score was. Everybody listened to Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall on the radio, and I played a lot of softball from the time I graduated from high school till I moved to Florida. Up there 12 years I played a lot of softball. Well, you'd go to a softball game, and as guys were coming in to the game to play, guys would be asking, "What's the Red score?" How the Reds doing? You just knew. And I remember as a kid going to bed at night, and they'd be on the West Coast playing the Dodgers or the Giants, and you listened to it on the radio till you fell asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always been a big Reds fan. In fact, my older brother, Doug, he and I were in the stadium the night Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's record.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
I got those ticket stubs.
Yeah.
And I told you that last weekend, Kay and I flew up to Cincinnati. It was her birthday.
Okay, yeah.
And this is what she wanted to do for her birthday. I talked her into it. We flew up there, and they were having Pete's memorial, And what I say about Pete is, it's kind of like a lot of us. He wasn't perfect, but he was a heck of a baseball player, I mean, not too many people perfect. I can only think of one other person that walked on this earth, and that's what I tell people about presidents and all kinds of stuff. But Pete wasn't perfect, but man, he could play, and he played hard.
Yeah.
And he had fun.
Yeah.
He loved playing. So it was kind of neat. We went up there, and they had a memorial for Pete. It started at 7 o'clock in the morning and went to 9 o'clock at night, 14 hours.
Wow.
Because of his number 14.
Yeah.
And Kay and I stood in line and went through and gave our condolences to his two daughters that were there, and I think a grandson when we went through. They were kind of doing shifts, the family.
Yeah.
So that's who was there as we came through. It was
wow.
And you got to sign it. They had a big banner, Forever Pete, number 14.
Yeah.
We signed it, Rest in peace, Pete.
Wow. Yeah, he was definitely legendary.
Yeah, Johnny Bench, it was a great team.
Duto Realty is a homegrown business with an eye for getting the job done right. From football games to Sunday school and everything in between, these ladies care about our community and the people in it. Helping buyers and sellers in all of Florida with all types of transactions, including residential, commercial, farm, or vacant land. They do it all. They even offer auction services and sellouts to always get the job done right. Yeah. Who's your favorite
player?
Yeah. Out of that group.
Well, for a while, I kind of switched allegiance from the Reds to the Baltimore Orioles because the Reds traded Frank Robinson.
Okay.
And Frank went over to the Orioles and won the Triple Crown.
Right.
And I just, So I became a Baltimore Oriole fan for about 2 or 3 years there because I was mad at the Reds. But no, you know, I'd probably Pete just because of the way he played. You know, all the things that happened after that, you know, sad, but, you know, he was fun to watch play.
Right. I was just listening to another podcast. I listened to this podcast called History That Doesn't Suck. And they go from it's all American history, so they went back from, you know, everything from the Revolution and right now they're in the 1920s, like, you know, early 30s. So they did one on the 1919 Chicago Black Sox, you know, White Sox.
Yeah,
but he did a story about how Shoeless Joe, and they had a famous pitcher. I can't think of the guy's name, but anyways, but Shoeless Joe is the one that you always remember,
right?
And the one they make movies about. But yeah, it was cool. They talked about that, and they talked about how Babe Ruth, because it was in the same era. You know, you're talking about the end of the teens, into the 20s, the Roaring 20s, and that's when, you know, 1919 is when they got rid of Babe Ruth from the Red Sox to the Yankees. Now, they said it was $100,000, but I heard $150,000. Either way, it's probably the worst deal I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah.
But and then the curse of the Great Bambino was there. But it was interesting to know that they still wanted to blame Shoeless Joe, but he had a heck of a series. Like, I don't remember his stats, but they weren't. The games were he didn't throw the game. I can tell you, you don't play good, and I mean, you can't blame this guy for playing good, and then he gets pretty much blackballed from the Hall of Fame. He'll never be in the Hall of Fame, just like how they did Pete Rose, because they said, and they even took it to court. They appealed, the White Sox appealed it. It got thrown out. Then it got brought back to court like a year later, and pretty much it was a public tarnish. It wasn't. The MLB had pretty much nothing to do with it. They've already washed their hands of it. But the people were like, no, we don't want this happening.
Right.
But
well, and, you know, with Pete, I mean, he just, you know, for so long he denied that he bet on baseball, you know. And then when he finally came out and said, yeah, I did, you know, I never bet against my team, because he was managing at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I always bet on the Reds to win. I mean, the fact that, you know, he probably took so long to come out and say, you know, I did it, that probably hurt him in the long run.
Yeah.
Plus, you know, the commissioner that banned him, you know, he passed away like right after that, and Pete thought, you know, he'd probably get reinstated in a couple years. It just never happened.
Well, my brother actually got to meet him in Vegas, because he was doing a big sign. You know, he always did a signing there.
Sure.
And it was like $150, and you got a signed ball. And my brother didn't pay. He had the ball. I don't know how he got it, but it wasn't at this time. But this is when he met him, and he was pretty much like they had the stanchions, like you can stay behind the ropes. He came over and talked to my brother, but my brother, he didn't want to come like at first. He was like, you know, kind of like, I don't want to go over there.
Right.
But I think my brother was talking to him, but my brother said he really wasn't a nice guy.
Wasn't a nice guy.
Wasn't a nice guy.
Well, he was a nice guy when we saw him out there, because, Kay was with me.
Yeah.
And
well, it just depends on the day.
He had his arm around Kay, and he had his arm around me, and, you know, I've got 2 or 3 baseballs signed by Pete. And I got a Pete Rose Way road sign that he signed. I got a jersey that's got all kinds of stuff on it that he signed. I don't know how much we spent. You know, but
do you have a my brother's baseball hat said Pete Rose, sorry I bet on baseball.
I don't know what it says. I think it just has his name. But I've got a bobblehead of him sliding head first.
Oh yeah.
That bobblehead.
The famous slide.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, you know, Pete definitely had his pitfalls, but you know, he played the game the right way. You know, the way you're supposed to play.
So I have a Johnny Bench story for you. Ready?
Okay. But can we take a timeout?
Do you want to take a timeout?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a timeout real quick. All right, so I got a Johnny Bench story. You ready?
Ready.
So obviously you can tell and my stuff I collect baseballs too, right? So I like try to look everywhere to find baseballs. And if I see somebody, even if it's somebody I don't collect, if it's a good deal, I'm going to grab it. Okay? So I find this person who was selling memorabilia, and I'm like, you got any baseballs? It was like a yard sale type deal. And they're like, yeah, we got a few down there there's a Tupperware bin. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, you know, when some people say baseball, they're talking about like T-balls and stuff like their kids don't play with anymore. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm looking through there, and I turn this ball over, and it's Johnny Bench, autographed. Ball is perfect. It's an MLB ball. It's not a China, like made in China, or like a T-ball or something. It's legit Major League Baseball. Johnny Bench signs it. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, that was kind of before my time. You know, I was born in '82, so I didn't really know these guys. But I was like, but I know who he is. So I get it. You know, I didn't pay much for it. I get home and my dad says, I was like, look what I found, Dad. He's like, oh, he's like, Johnny Bench, that's awesome. He was telling me how, you know, who he was, and I said, yeah. I was like, pretty much got it for nothing. A song. He's like, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. That's
you got your dad down pretty good.
He's like, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I was like, what? I asked the lady how much she wanted for it, and she told me she wanted X amount. Yeah. And I felt like, okay, I'm not. She's selling, not me. Yeah. So that's my treasure I found. And I'm like, I found a Johnny Bench ball.
Dad wanted you to go back and give her some more money.
Pretty much. And I, you know what? I had no problem doing with that. But I was like, you know what? It's all good.
I ended up with a baseball. Talking about your dad, I had a baseball. It wasn't signed or anything until your dad got a hold of it one day, and I showed up, you know, and I was looking at the ball, and heck, Nolan Ryan had signed that ball. And I knew exactly who had signed it because your dad had been in there messing around, and he had got my baseball and put Nolan Ryan on it.
I found an old. It was an NFL from the late 80s, early 90s program, like a magazine. And it had all the teams and everything on the back. It said, best wishes, John Madden. I said, oh my God. Yeah. John, I've got a John. You know how hard it is to find a John Madden autograph? It was my dad. Yeah. He signed it.
He did the same thing.
He was like, Billy, that was me. I'm like,
see if he remembers that he signed my baseball. Oh, Nolan Ryan.
Yeah, he's
He's known for that, I guess.
He told me, he said, he was at one of the schools when he was working there. I don't know if it's South Central High or Wildwood, but he took a ball and he signed Mickey Mantle and he threw it on the field.
I can believe it.
I said, Dad, that's probably not legal.
You know, your dad, I can honestly say your dad was probably one of the, 3 or 4 most fun guys I played golf with.
Is the exterior of your home or business covered in dirt, mildew, or mold? Driveway or walkway stain? Pressure King can make your siding, deck, vents, and concrete look new again with no damage. Pressure King has cleaned the exterior of houses and businesses all over Sumter County area. Usually it takes less than a day and costs less than you would expect. Call AJ at 352-457-7209.
Yeah, there's certain guys that you play golf with and you just have a great time. Right. Chuck Sullivan was one.
Oh, Chuck!
I got to tell you a couple Chuck stories. We go to play in one of those golf tournaments that I was telling you about that we thought we were going to win that time until we got rained out. But this time Chuck's on my team, and he shows up and he's got this old golf bag, and I swear it looked like it had it still had cobwebs, and of course. All of us had, the bags that would stand up and stuff. Well, this old bag that Chuck had wouldn't stand up, so he flops it down on the first tee, and this is no joke, Billy. 3 or 4 little mice went running out of this bag, and we're just rolling now. We're on the ground laughing, because like, Chuck, when's the last time you swung a golf club? Oh. But Chuck would, this is what Chuck would do. He would show up at whatever golf course we were playing. Uh-oh.
You're good. You're
Phone's
good.
ringing. He would show up at whatever golf course we were playing, and he'd walk into the pro shop, and he'd say, I got to think about how he'd say this. Chuck Sullivan's my name. Golf's my game. What's the course record and where's the first tee? That's what he'd say. That's what he'd say to the person, behind the counter. Yeah. We'd just all be looking and shaking our head. But Chuck used to take 3 practice swings. No, he'd take 2 practice swings. First practice swing, he'd take about a 12-inch divot, that you could probably, plant corn in or something.
It's a ditch.
Yeah. And then the next practice swing, he'd say, perfect. That was perfect. And then the next swing would be his swing. Yeah. And he'd say, I should have hit the second one. The second one was always perfect. We said, Chuck, why don't you just, take your divot and then hit your ball on the next one, because your second one's always perfect. Yeah. Because he'd say perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to decline that. He didn't tell me to shut that phone off.
Oh, my bad.
Anyhow, that was a couple Chuck stories. But
did you call him Kellogg's for 2 scoops?
Yeah, should have.
2 scoops of sand.
Should have. Chuck was, Chuck. A lot of stories about Chuck, but he helped me coach a little bit. Him and Coach Heilman. That was a good combination there.
Yeah. Those 2 guys have a bunch of stories. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, I've heard some stories. I'm like, man,
well, there's a lot that
Chuck
couldn't tell on. You couldn't.
Oh no, I can't say it on air yet. Right. It's definitely not something that you can relay.
Billy, do you know my son Caleb?
Oh yeah.
Over at
Caleb's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, he helped me coach the last few years, and that was a lot of fun having him on the bench, and of course Dave White. I told you he helped. I had really good assistants through the years, and right. Chuck and Keith were a couple of them, and up at Wildwood, it was nice. My older brother helped me a couple years.
Oh, that's cool.
And then Caleb came along, and he coached with me. So
literally like a family affair. I mean,
it really was. And I got to say, and Kay as well. She was kind of the perfect coach's wife. Yeah. She would do whatever, run the concession stand, video, wash the team laundry if we needed it. But she was there all the way through, and probably couldn't have done a lot of stuff without her.
I absolutely adore Kay. She is. Every time I see her, she's always got a smile on her face. I mean, I got to know her really well because of her being at the high school and the library.
Right.
And just a great person all around. I've always enjoyed our talks. I go check on her. I would make a special trip just to go see her, in the library. I'd be like, hey, just make sure everything's good. How are you doing? How's life? And she's very, very, very. She's such a good person. And I don't get to see her as much. I get to see her often, and when I get to see her, it's like a surprise. Right. I see her at Wildwood, or I see her at South Sumter High sometimes. She keeps floating around, but you and I both were lucky to have the women in our
how's
life.
it they say that you you married out of your league?
Yeah, you outkicked your coverage.
Outkicked your coverage.
Yes.
I like that better.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I got to tell you a Clinton Hart story.
Sure.
Of course, I told you Clinton, his senior year, I mean, he was a heck of a player for us. We went down to play Brooksville Central, and they had a really good team. I'm trying to think who the player they had. It seemed like it was a Godwin. But they had a really good player, and we started the game, and they were just sticking it to us.
Yeah.
And I called a timeout, and I can remember saying, guys, somebody's got to do something to turn this thing around and get us going.
Right.
Well, we go out of the timeout, and Clinton takes the ball the length of the court and does this monster slam dunk, that kind of like when I told you DeAndre Mitchell did it against Orlando Jones. It just turned the game around.
Yeah.
You know, guys got fired up, and the next thing you know, we were coming back and beating them. But Clinton, just to show you what kind of guy he was, you know, I coached him in basketball, and like I said, you know, mostly just his senior year, because his junior year, you know, he and I, at times, we butted heads. But when he went and started playing football, when Kay and I would call Clinton up and say, hey, we're going to be in Cincinnati, and you guys are playing, any chance, you know, you could get us a couple tickets, he'd say, Coach, they'll be waiting for you. You know, they'll be waiting for you at will call.
Yep.
We did that. We went to Indianapolis, we went to Cincinnati, we went to Atlanta, we went to Jacksonville, you know, all these places. And he'd also say, you need a hotel room? I'd say, Clinton, no. You know, I got the flight, I got the hotel room, I just need the tickets.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what he did.
Yeah.
And I know he does the same thing, did the same thing for Coach Sherman.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following. Webster Ace Hardware and Farm Supply are generous sponsors for today's podcast. They have been a family-owned business for 27 years. This helpful hardware store sells items such as archery, Ariat clothing and boots, Wrangler jeans, case knives, Hammond's candies, and live fishing gear. They also have a full selection of hardware, RV supply, propane, Ben Moore, Royal & Clark, and Kenningston paints. You need a barn or fencing job done? Custom barn kits and roofing metal are provided at your local Ace Hardware store. What about a new grill for the yard? Traeger, Big Green Egg, Weber, and Blackstone are found here, along with all the accessories to go with them. Stock up your workshop with DeWalt, Milwaukee, or Craftsman tools. They got you covered. Remember to go to ace.com to shop their entire line to have items shipped directly to the store.
Before we sign off, you know, I just want to say a couple things about Coach Sherman.
Yeah.
When I came down, you know, I told you football was king. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it took me a year or so to realize, you know what? Those guys who are out there in that football field being successful are the same guys that are going to come in and be successful for me on the basketball court, you know. And I used to tell Coach White up at Wildwood, because we'd have those conversations about, you know, how it was hard. Basketball season would start and football was still going on, especially if you had a good team, because they were in the playoffs. And as a coach, you know, you had to battle wanting your players. And, you know, I got to the point where I didn't want my players. I wanted them to win state championships in football, because I felt like when I got them in basketball, they were going to be winners on the basketball court, just like they were on the football field. And, you know, it took me a year or two to realize that. But once I realized that, and you know, I appreciated Coach Sherman for everything that he did, and I learned from him a lot of stuff. But I was glad, like one year, I think our best year, we were 1-6 before I got the football players. And once I got the football players, and they brought that winning mentality out onto the court, you know, it just carried over.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt at Wildwood, too. When I had football guys that played football, I wanted them to win.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be successful, because I knew if they were successful there, they'd be successful. Well, and the same way with, you know, when they graduated.
Yeah.
You know, I got to say something about Don Bailey. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Don Bailey.
Don Bailey. He played about the time that Fred Williams and Quinn Williams played.
Okay, that's just a little bit before my time, but yeah.
Well, Don, I think he goes by Rolando Bailey.
Okay.
He's been a principal, superintendent, I think, down in around Orlando.
Gotcha.
Real successful, you know, and you know, he was a pretty good basketball player, but he wasn't great.
Right.
But he's been great, you know, doing what he's doing.
Right.
And a lot of times, I mean, all these guys that graduate and go into the service, I'm so proud of them.
Yeah.
You know, I tell them when I see them, you know, that's great.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them go in and make a career out of it. So, you know, I'm proud of all those guys, and, you know, whether they went to college or, you know, went on or not, that go out and do something really great with their lives. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, preparing preparing students or student athletes for the future, regardless. I mean, because eventually your sport is going to run out, whether it's the classification, like I always feel bad for like girls that play softball. There's not a professional league.
Right.
They have an Olympics, but that only comes every 4 years.
Right.
So like stuff like that, where it's like you prepare these kids for life. And it's like when you get outside, they're going to be as successl as they would be doing a sport, because they know how to win and they know what it takes to win. Right. And I think both schools do a great job of preparing our kids for the future. I mean, everybody talks about how we always like, and I've said it myself, I'm like, wow, the future's looking real grim.
Right.
But how many times have they said that 30 years ago? Right. You know what I mean? That whatever they thought was bad or was going to be bad ended up not being as bad as they thought it was going to be. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all about interpretation. Yep. But, it's awesome that you've gotten to taste a little bit of both sides. And, when it all comes down to the end of the day, trying to help a kid no matter where they play, that was one of the best things about when I would go visit our kids at college, or shoot, even when when Keanu Neal was playing still, I'd go up to Atlanta. One year I called it, AJ Bryant has a thing where he says it's the Raider Roadshow, and he takes his basketball team to different places, and they hang out and they do, it's just a team building exercise. Right. Well, I called mine the former Raider Roadshow. So I would go one summer. I went up to Carson Newman, and I went up and saw Montel Presley. He was up there. I visited him. Took mom and dad. They loved it. And it's just went to App State, saw Devin Pappenheim. Went and saw Kiki at training camp. Yeah. And it was just like, these guys love it. They love to see a familiar face. You know what I mean? And I love going up there. I love taking the time to go up there and just show them how much we care about them. You know, because they make us proud. They don't know how proud we are. Right. You know what I mean? And you don't have to be an NFL player or an NBA basketball star. Just going and getting your degree and being a successful person in life in general, is just great.
You're right.
So, but I just think everybody. Sports is a great tool to bring people closer together, and I think it's people watch it together and they go, it brings them together. Not only that, but it's when they learn stuff about people like just doing like this podcast. Right. I can talk about sports, but it's not always about sports. It's about where they came from and what they're doing now, and so it all kind of comes out in the wash, if you know what I mean.
Well. I want to tell you one last thing about my family. Sure. My dad, he always said he lived on a farm in Kentucky. I think that's why I got along with Coach Sherman and Coach Hampton and Mr. Bob Edwards, because they were all Kentucky. They had some Kentucky in them, and my parents were from Kentucky. But my dad was raised on a dairy farm, and he used to say he had 7 brothers, and they all had a sister. So there was 7 boys, 8 boys, count my dad, and the 1 girl, but they never were allowed to play sports because they had to work on the farm. And so my dad growing up, man, I mean, he encouraged me, go play. Yeah. Go play. And I'm so thankful that he did that, because that's what I grew up. I grew up with sports, and for the most part, it was always a good thing. Yeah. The things you learn through sports and sportsmanship and all that. And so I'm thankful that he pushed me in that direction, right, to play sports. Well, what else is very helpful when you're talking about that hard work. You put hard work on the farm, you put hard work in the sport. Yeah. You dedicate yourself to your craft or whatever you're doing. Right. No matter what you're doing, it doesn't even have to be sports. To education, to life, to your spouse, to your family. Sure. You don't quit on them. No. You don't quit on the job. You don't quit on the sport. It's so
it's so well woven together that people don't even realize that it's all in the same little niche. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I didn't realize. You know, back in the day, there's big farms people. That's why he had 8 kids.
Right.
So he didn't have to do all the stuff by himself.
Right. Yeah.
You know. But I mean, and that's
when
that's
you didn't have all that fancy equipment.
Well, that's true. It was all hard, you know, hard work and manual labor.
Right.
I was just telling somebody the other night that doing a when I used to work out in the fields, on the farm, you come home. I could work 80 hours in any other job I've had, and that one day out in the field was an equivalent to that much time because you put that much effort and sweat into it, and you came home and you go, man, I really did something today. I really made a difference. That I thought, you know.
Sure.
I mean, you were tired. You were so tired you couldn't even think. Half the time you didn't even eat. You came home, took a shower, and you went to bed.
Growing up, the hardest job I ever worked was baling hay.
Oh yeah,
you know,
but I loved it. I loved doing that.
Well, and you know, we were back when I was baling hay. I think we were probably making about $2.50 an hour. You know, and we'd be out there 10 hours.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a hard job.
Yeah, y'all needed a union rep back then.
Well, we did. But, you know, $20 to go to the fair.
Yeah.
You know, that was big money.
You had money in your pocket back then, too.
Yeah.
And that made you appreciate it more. You know what I'm saying? When you have to do things on your own, you have to work for your money.
Yep.
That's when you start to realize, hey, man, I don't know. Should I buy that new truck or should I just wait for a little while? You know, but you make better choices when it's all on you.
Yeah. I think, and, you know, our society, I think we're losing a little bit of that, you know, hard work mentality because, you know, you go into a restaurant and they don't have people working and, you know, it's frustrating.
Yeah. So, like, how long are we going to be, I want to ask the people at the restaurant, how long are we going to be short-staffed? I mean, it's been 4 years since COVID.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, are these people ever going to come back to work? I mean, if you can't come back to work, I understand, but there are people that can come back to work that don't want to come back.
Billy, I went out to Sterling College this past summer and played in a golf tournament, and I hadn't been out there since I graduated.
Right.
And we come into town. The town looks the same. It's a little town in the middle of Kansas, and you know, and here's this, you know, small college, and right next to it is this Sonic's restaurant. Looked brand new.
Yeah.
And one of the guys I was with that still works at the college, I said, man, you guys got a Sonic's right here next to the college? He said, yeah, we had a Sonic's. I said, what do you mean you had it? He said, it's closed up. I said, well, how long was it there? He said, a year or two. I said, well, what happened? He said, they can't get anybody to work.
Yeah.
I said, it's within walking distance of the college.
Yeah.
I said, you know, gosh, you'd think you'd have all kinds of college kids needing a, you know, extra.
Absolutely.
But no.
But no, it doesn't work that way.
No.
No.
So hopefully we get back to some of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know what it'll take, but hopefully.
Right. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate you coming over today. I got to know you a little bit more. Like I said, I got to hang out with Caleb a lot when I worked at the school when I was a sub, and Caleb's awesome.
Yeah.
I text him every once in a while. I used to drive by and honk, and he'd be like, "Don't do that, the dogs go crazy." No, I'm like, I'm gonna keep doing it. Yeah. He told me, no, I'm just kidding. But then I honked one time, and he's like, "Nope, no more dogs. We don't have any more dogs." So I'm like, okay. He's like, "'Cause the dogs bark, and then it wakes the baby up."
Well, he's got a dog again.
Yeah. Oh, he's got another dog.
Yeah, and he's got the cutest little boy, Cooper. That you know, he's going to be fun. Growing up.
Oh yeah, and that'll be somebody else you can coach and help raise.
I'm gonna try not to do too much coaching there.
Right.
Cooper and I got to watch them a little bit at the end of last year because they lost their babysitter, and you know, Coop was not in preschool yet, so Coop and I, you know, we played some golf together and did some things. It was fun.
You got to hang out. That's pretty cool.
It was fun. But I enjoyed it, Billy.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and like I said, I got to know more about you, and I'm so glad I got you on here. I know when I asked Miss Kay if you'd be interested. And she's like, yeah, let me give you. She said yes for you. By the way,
yeah.
She just said, I'll give you his number, and I was like, okay, awesome. But I appreciate.
She's kind of like I told you all the stuff she does.
Yeah,
she's kind of like my agent too. You know,
maybe she could be mine too. I need somebody.
She'd be good. She'd be good.
Well, yeah.
And tell your dad hello.
I will.
You know,
yeah.
I miss him.
Shout out.
You know, he's a good guy.
Yeah. He keeps me on my toes. I tell you.
Well,
I tell you.
He used to keep me and Hamp on our toes.
Well, I'm glad that somebody's out there watching over you. But don't play too much golf.
I'm gonna try not to play too much.
Okay. Well, you promise me that?
I promise.
Okay. Well, we'll do what we can, right?
Okay. I enjoyed it, Billy.